Hello, and welcome to this short interview to one of our dear clients from JTI and a long friend of Acti who's familiar with using Acti in different settings, Justina Rosmoslovska-Weiss. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but but before I move on, maybe you can introduce yourself and say a little bit about JTI and the company, and then we will dig into some questions. But thank you so much for participating, Justina.
Thank you, Live. So my name is Justyna Rozmysłowska-Wize. I am located in Poland and I work for Japan Tobacco International. I am a part of this GBS, so it's a shared service center, and I am in the position of Global Learning and Development Expert Manager. So in my position, I am responsible for the entire leadership development framework and design, including, let's call it, digital learning platforms, programs supported through online gamified learning.
And Justina, you've been kind of following or dragging Acti with you into different positions, and in this case, I want because it's connected to the prize that we won. We won gold for the best gaming and simulation at Brandon Hall. So I'm kind of interested in getting your experience with Acti and why you're bringing Acti with you into different companies. So if we can start with your experience on Acti.
So I met Acti for the first time in my former employer. I will not say the name of this employer, but that time we used Acti as a part of the live virtual programs dedicated to change management. And it's like, before the coronavirus, we had this program offered as a face-to-face training. And then with the corona, this immediate need to move to this online learning, we just transformed this training into this live virtual program. And then it occurred that having online simulation that is included into live virtual training, it was most beneficial part of this live virtual experience for our leaders, because they were not able, before this training, they were not able to imagine how they will be able to transfer this knowledge about the change management into the real practice, especially when discussing just in the live virtual environment. And this is how I really like. It's not that I become the big fan of the Acti, because I was the big fan even before, but this was like, the clear example for me how this gamified learning can be extremely helpful for learning and development environment to convince senior leaders for the online learning. Mm-hmm. And this is why, when I transfer to the new organization, and I checked what kind of online solutions we have right now here. I see that there is, although we have gamified solutions also here at JTI, the learning and this didactic approach offered by Acti was still so interesting for me that we decided to start collaborating with Acti at JTI.
Is that also why you chose Acti? Is that you actually have these more deeper both data, but also a deeper theory layer in the games that makes it more relevant for people to play? Or
look, there are different ways to gamify the learning content, and one of the most popular also here at JTI is just to organize something which is called fabular games. So there is always the story behind, and then you just act with the avatar and just learn through this avatar, which is really nice, and it makes the game itself extremely engaging. But still the teaching content there is quite limited, because you only can interact through the this prescripted I don't know how it's called, prescripted role playing by the avatar. When it comes to Acti, what I like a lot is this really deep dive teaching content behind the model. So first of all, there is quite long, but that's true, quite long introduction to the concept. Then you can also learn through your own experience, because if you would like to really give the answer which is the closest to your real experience, you have to go through all those more or less 20 few different options, and then you can also learn really through those options what are typical different behaviors. Then you select your one, your preferred one, and this is something what makes this game so funny for me, then you can observe how your decision impact the entire environment. And this is something which I really like here in Acti, that it's more like, from this system thinking and systems perspective, that it's not only like, your reaction impact the direct stakeholder with you, with whom you interact, but it impacts entire environment. And this is what is really visible at the end of the day in the Acti.
So it's actually you're actually pointing out that the complexity in the games and the layers that are is actually some of the value that you see from people playing the games.
I can say from my own perspective that yes, I see it as the one of the most beneficial part. And even last week I had this discussion with my colleague, with my teammate, when we compared different game-based solutions for learning, and still this complex didactic approach that is presented in Acti. This is something that makes this game so unique compared to other gamified solutions. It's just not only about the simple quiz or just simple follow the avatar. It's just more about this, how adults really learn based on the experience.
If you should pinpoint the value for people who's playing by using Acti and the value for Japan Tobacco International and you as the one who's responsible, how would you point it out for the players first? What is the value that they gain?
Maybe before I will jump to the value, I will just point out that learning, it's a process. So you cannot expect that it will be 5 minutes quiz or 5 minutes interactive with the game. Learning, it's a process, and this is also something that is visible here. Okay, at the end of the day, those games are quite long, so you also have to invest your time. But through investing this time, you really reflect how this learning can be implemented into your real practice, and this is what makes this program so unique.
So actually, the user's way of seeing that their own reality is reflected in the game makes it easy for them to take the learnings from the game into their own reality. Is that kind of?
It's not only about reflecting on reality, but more also seeing how others behaves. And just reflecting in the future how my decisions will impact my reality really in the future.
Mm-hmm. And what are the feedbacks you get from people playing? What type of feedback are you receiving from having it in your workshops and learning sessions?
Feedback that we collected so far was not only about the Acti itself, but was about the entire program where Acti was a part of. But in majority of the feedback, Acti was mostly provided as one of the highlighting moments for this program. And this is also
so people actually...
how the Acti can be positioned. It might be positioned as a standalone product, which is always nice, but it also might be used as a part of this instructor-led programs. And then really having extremely good facilitator for this game makes this game even more useful.
Yeah, because you have the session view where you can see the results and profiles of theories and so on. Yeah, that's also what we get back. We never see Acti as a standalone. It's very often part of something bigger. It might be an element, but it's always part of something bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, we are discussing several options how to make the best out of the Acti, and offering as a standalone product is one of the options which for sure will push here. It's just allow everybody in the organization to play the games which are the most interesting for them. But what's even more, we just want to use those games as a part of our learning and development products. I don't know, for leadership development, for first newly appointed leaders, it might be for the agile development program, but still use those games as something to enable the learning and just really sustain the learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I've been doing a lot of interviews on other topics, and the key thing is always how you reinforce something that you learned somewhere else. And actually, the smaller games is quite fantastic for doing reinforcements, because you can have more people joining the same game, not at the same time, but asynchronously, and that creates the engagement for people, reinforcing something you have learned somewhere else, but on the same topic. So. But we are coming. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I really like to ask one last question, which would be if somebody else wanted to use like a game from Acti, what would your advice be to them?
Other organization or just a learner?
But both, if you think of people in your same position who is deciding what are we bringing into our organization.
When it comes to other L&D experts, I would recommend them to have a closer look to this program to make their online learnings more engaging. And this is something what I already did with some of other partners with whom I collaborate on several leadership development programs. I just advise them to have a look on, for example, Acti as something that can make this program less traditional and move more into this 21st century learning. When it comes to learners, what I really like in Acti in this case, it's your variety of of how learner can interact with the teaching content. It's on the one hand, it's just those cycles which are extremely time consuming, but also extremely useful, and this is where you can really learn how the environment will interact with your decisions. But also what I like more and more is those bubbles and the barometer feature of those gamings, which makes I love assessments, for example, and this is also what I see in this kind of solutions. It's a part of the it looks like the assessments, and it's always much easier for me to accept the outcome of the learning and what it says about me, as it's something that it's empirically proved, and at the end of the day it shows how I naturally behave in this situation.
So actually the data is part of the motivation. So you're giving the advice, have a deeper look into the tools and actually see how many different parts that you can actually use in different parts of your learning approach that are actually engaging the learner in a different way.
Really, I cannot agree more with it. It's exactly. So from the learner's perspective, it's more about this variety of different options, and just to select this one which the most fits you.
Thank you, Justina. You have said so many nice things about Acti, and it clearly tells why we deserve gold. And I have to say, Justina, we would not have had gold without having great clients like yourself following us and wanting to use us and encourage us to continuously develop what we are developing here. So thank you so much for supporting both this and also Acti as a whole. So thank you for your time.
I love working with the winning companies, so happy.
Nice.